The morning is thin and endless. You're already above the clouds before the world below remembers to wake. The horizon glows like a wound that refuses to close, red bleeding softly into gold. The hum of the engine is steady, but beneath it lives another rhythm. Your pulse, quick and quiet, like a secret you've learned to keep even from yourself. The cockpit breathes with you. Metal contracts, glass fogs, leather creaks. Before you drift off, if stories told in whispers belong to your kind of evening, take a moment to subscribe, not out of habit, but to keep these echoes alive. Tell us where you're listening from, or which image lingers. The frost on the canopy, the red tail in sunlight, the silence between clouds. Now let the noise of today loosen its grip. Let the hum steady your breath. Let the horizon open, not as a battlefield, but as forgiveness. The sky remembers everything, and tonight it remembers them. You're listening to echoes of war. You smell oil and ozone and that faint sweetness of burnt fuel that means everything is working. Far below, rivers wind through fog like veins under translucent skin. A train leaves a trail of smoke you'll never hear. From this height the world looks healed, and that's the most dangerous illusion of all. You think of the ground, of drill instructors and sandpaper heat, of boots pounding dust into rhythm, of the first time you touched a control stick and realized it was the only instrument that never lied to you. Every takeoff since has been a small prayer, every landing a confession. They called you the Tuskegee Airmen. Before the name, before the legend, you were cadets standing in Alabama's breathless noon. You remember the smell of creosote and cut grass, of engines coughing awake under a sky too bright to stare into. You remember the doubt, not your own, but theirs. The officers who didn't believe you could fly, the lawmakers who didn't believe you should. They gave you hand-me-down planes, second-hand manuals, and eyes that measured you before you'd even taken off. And still, you rose. Each time the propeller caught and dust spun behind you, something invisible shifted. The air no longer belonged solely to those who'd claimed it first. It belonged to anyone willing to meet its honesty. There's a sound only pilots know, not the roar of the engine, but the lullaby inside it. That low vibration that becomes time itself. It hums through the bones, through the rivets, through memory. If you listen closely, you can still hear it now. Before you drift off, if stories told in whispers belong to your kind of evening, take a moment to subscribe, not out of habit, but to keep these echoes alive. Tell us where you're listening from, or which image lingers. The frost on the canopy, the red tail in sunlight, the silence between clouds. Now let the noise of today loosen its grip. Let the hum steady your breath. Let the horizon open, not as a battlefield, but as forgiveness. The sky remembers everything, and tonight it remembers them. You're listening to Echoes of War. Chapter 1. Tuskegee, Alabama. The ground beneath the sky. Heat and dust. The Alabama air doesn't just sit, it presses. It hums in your ears, clings to your skin, slides down your back in long, patient rivulets. The runway shimmers as if the earth itself were breathing. Even the shadows seem tired. At the far end, planes bake in sunlight, BT-13 Valiants, their paint dull and peeling. A breeze lifts grit against your ankles. It smells of rubber and rust. Men stand in rows, faces set toward discipline. Some whistle fragments of hymns, others chew silence like tobacco. A whistle shrieks. Boots strike dust. The day begins in cadence, sweat pooling in collars. Somewhere a dog barks once and then understands this is not its hour. You taste salt, dust, a hint of tin from the canteen. You look at your hands, calloused, cracked, purposeful. Each fingerprint is a map of the miles that brought you here. The recruiter's smirk, the train south through divided stations, the conductor who pretended not to see your uniform. All of it now folded into the weight of the morning. When the instructor shouts attention, the sound rings against hangar walls and flies upward, caught by the rafters. Even the air seems to listen. The classroom and the sky. The classrooms smell of chalk and hot paper. On the blackboard, lift and drag become scripture. You copy equations that look like destiny written in symbols. When the numbers balance, you feel something open inside you, permission disguised as math. Nights are slower. Fans turn lazily above bunks. The air smells of soap, sweat, dreams. Someone hums, a change is gonna come, too early for the years that will need it. Outside, cicadas tune their violins. Heat recedes inch by inch. Morning again. Engines cough to life, coughing smoke that curls blue against the sky. Your instructor doesn't look up when you climb in. You check everything twice, heart drumming faster than the magneto. Then throttle forward, and the world shifts. Gravel leaps, horizon tilts, and suddenly gravity lets go. The first seconds aloft feel like disbelief, then like belonging. Below, the field shrinks to a postage stamp of ambition. You exhale, and the plane steadies, a communion signed in lift and trust. Barriers in uniform. Rumors move faster than airplanes. That Congress wants the program shut down. That instructors call it a social experiment. That someone important said colored men lack coordination. You pretend not to hear, but words like that stick like burrs. In the mess hall, laughter becomes armor. A joke about engines that refuse prejudice, about sky that takes anyone who asks politely. When the colonel walks through, conversations tighten, but the humor lingers in the air like aftersmoke. Some officers teach with fairness, others with deliberate frost. You learn to absorb both. Every sneer becomes fuel. Every past inspection, a victory measured in millimeters. Evening. The sun drops behind the hangars, painting the dust copper. For a heartbeat the entire field glows. The planes, the windows, the sweat on your arms. It looks holy, though no one says so. The night before departure. Orders come quietly, as they always do. Transfer north for advanced training. No ceremony, only packing and silence. That night, the air finally cools. Moths batter against yellow bulbs. Crickets hold long notes between them. You sit on a crate, writing home by flashlight. You describe the heat, the lessons, the sky that keeps forgiving your mistakes. You do not mention the rest, the looks, the words, the weight of being doubted by design. When the letter is done, you fold it neatly and watch condensation bead on the fuselage beside you. Your reflection shivers in the metal. You reach out. It disappears under your touch. Somewhere down the barracks, someone starts a quiet song, and others join, soft, off-key, sincere. It carries across the field, past the plains, up into the dark where your next horizon waits. The wind shifts, tasting of pine and fuel. You look toward the runway. In the distance, a wing catches moonlight, a single line of silver and red, already becoming memory. The night holds its breath, and the sky waits. Chapter 2, Selfridge Field, The Color of Discipline. Arrival in a new light. You arrive at Selfridge under a northern sky so wide it almost startles you. The air smells different here, cooler, threaded with lake water and machine oil. The light is harder too, metallic, as if the sun has been polished by wind. The base sits flat against the horizon, geometry carved from order, hangers in rows, flags snapping like punctuation. You are given a bunk, a locker, a number. The number fits neatly on every form. It erases accent, birthplace, hesitation. You learn quickly that efficiency is the local religion. Even the silence has rank. Your first morning begins before the light. Boots thump in rhythm, the corridor echoing like a drum. A sergeant shouts roll call until voices blend into one long vowel of obedience. Outside, frost crystals bloom on the tarmac. Breath becomes visible, a small cloud that disappears before it can be questioned. The flight line smells of kerosene and cold metal. Planes stand at attention, grey skins shining faintly pink in the early sun. Engines idle in the distance, their low growl a promise. You tighten your gloves, nod to the man beside you, and realize that discipline has its own temperature, just above freezing. The classroom of altitude. Inside the training rooms, the walls sweat chalk dust. Equations crawl across blackboards. Vectors dissect air into obedience. You trace the diagrams with your eyes, feeling how theory becomes muscle. The instructor writes attitude determines altitude in block letters. The class chuckles softly. Too neat a phrase to be true. But later, at 2,000 feet, you'll remember it, and it will be truer than prayer. Afternoons are filled with engines. You sit in the cockpit of a trainer, canopy open, sunlight reflecting off the instrument glass. The checklist unfolds like a psalm. Magnetos, flaps, trim, mixture, throttle. Each word a ritual, each switch a declaration that you belong here. Sometimes a crosswind catches you wrong, tipping the wing, jolting your heart. You correct, breathe, correct again. The plane steadies, and you learn the subtle art of apology the sky demands after every mistake. Evenings smell of wool and polish. You scrub the day from your jacket until the brass gleams like captured sunlight. The barracks hum with radios and quiet talk. Someone reads aloud from a newspaper article doubting that Negro pilots can perform under pressure. No one replies. Instead, a hand reaches out, turns the volume down, and the hum of silence becomes your answer. Friction and fellowship. Discipline sharpens everything. Posture, speech, even laughter. You measure words before letting them go. Yet between orders and inspections, life sneaks in. Cards dealt on mess hall tables, stories traded like contraband. Someone hums a blues tune that tastes of home. Another keeps time with a spoon against a tin cup. It becomes a small rebellion, a reminder that identity can survive regulation. You learn your fellow cadets by rhythm. Jackson's fast grin, Thompson's nervous cough, Wilkins' way of talking to engines as if they were temperamental saints. Together you form an alphabet the officers haven't learned how to read. One icy morning, the hydraulics freeze on a training plane. A mechanic named Curtis spends hours coaxing the system back to life, hands raw and bleeding. When the engine finally coughs awake, every man within earshot cheers once, quietly. The sound is small, but it fills the hangar like gospel. Off base, the old rules remain. A diner turns you away at lunch. The sign on the door is polite but absolute. Back at the airfield, the mess hall welcomes you with burnt coffee and laughter. That, too, is a kind of flight, the ability to turn exclusion into altitude. The first span. The day of the long-range exercise dawns brittle and bright. Ice crystals glitter along the wings like sequins sewn by the cold. You check your maps twice, pencil lines neat and thin. When the instructor signals, you throttle forward, wheels rattling against frozen ground, and climb into the clearest air you've ever seen. Below, the world is a patchwork quilt of frozen fields and narrow rivers, stitched together by roads that gleam like wire. Formation tightens until you can see the tremor of another pilot's hands on his control stick. Through the radio comes a voice. Steady now. The command is unnecessary. Steadiness has become your nature. Mid-flight, the compass flickers. You correct by instinct, recalculating headings against the shape of the clouds. Navigation becomes memory. One hill, one river bend, one beam of light marking direction. For a heartbeat, you understand what the instructors meant when they said mastery feels like silence. After landing, the air smells faintly of antifreeze and triumph. The mechanic pats the fuselage as if it were a living thing. The instructor nods once, approval hidden inside brevity. You grin into your gloves, the smile private but fierce. As daylight thins, you linger by the plane. The metal still radiates warmth from flight. A red stripe freshly painted along the tail catches the setting sun and flares bright as blood, then cools to ember. You touch it gently. It feels like the future, unwritten, undeniable, yours. You walk back toward the barracks, boots echoing against concrete, the cold biting but honest. Overhead, the last plane of the day turns for home, its exhaust glowing faintly red against the twilight. You stop and watch until it vanishes into color. The sky closes around it like a held breath, and you realize that discipline has given you something rarer than obedience: belonging. Chapter 3. Over Italy. The Weight of Heaven. Departure. Dawn creeps across the airfield like a slow confession. The tents breathe fog. Men move through it in silhouettes, half awake, half memory. Someone hums a gospel line to keep his hands from shaking. Another traces a finger along his plane's name painted in chipped white. Birmingham Bell. Engines cough, catch, clear their throats. The smell of fuel thickens until it tastes like metal on the tongue. You walk toward your Mustang, boots grinding frost. A mechanic hands you a clipboard and a grin that tries too hard. He's been up since midnight checking valves, tightening bolts that might decide your fate. "Bring her home," he says. Not command, not plea, just the ritual every man here repeats because words are all they can offer. You climb the ladder, buckle in. Leather squeaks. Breath clouds the glass. The morning horizon is a bruise of lavender and fire. When the signal flare arcs skyward, every engine roars at once, 30 hearts finding the same beat. The ground shudders, then falls away. Below, Italy stretches like a torn map repaired with sunlight. Olive groves, vineyards, rail lines, scars of bombardment. Smoke rises from villages already cooking breakfast, unaware that above them men are adjusting trim tabs and courage. The sea flashes on the edge of vision, a silver blade laid flat. You level out, formation forming, 4 planes, then 8, then 30. Each red tail catches the new light like punctuation at the end of a prayer. You glance right. Your wingman grins, gives a thumbs up. The gesture floats between cockpits, small and human amid the machinery of empire. Escort duty. Hours in the air dissolve into hum and horizon. The bombers appear ahead, B-17s, ponderous and miraculous, their bellies heavy with mathematics and faith. You slide above them, guardian angels painted red. Radio chatter crackles. Coordinates, altitude, weather reports spoken like psalms. Someone coughs, someone swears, someone whispers a hymn. You check your gauges again, as if certainty could be forced by repetition. Below the clouds the land gleams in pieces, rivers twisting like veins, mountains rising in grey fists. You imagine the people down there, farmers, soldiers, children, each looking up at the same sky for a different reason. Then the horizon stirs. Specks. Growing. Darkening. Messerschmitts climbing through glare, sharp-winged and certain. Your stomach tightens. The radio crackles once more, 2 syllables only. Bandits. 11 o'clock. Formation compresses. Silence thickens. The first tracers carve bright stitches through the blue. The sound isn't thunder, it's tearing cloth. You roll, dive, feel gravity snatch at your ribs. A bullet snaps past the canopy, leaving a chalk line of smoke. Instinct takes over where fear would be. Throttle, rudder, climb, breathe. You catch sight of an enemy plane arcing upward, sunlight flashing off its nose. For a second it's beautiful. Then it's gone, spiraling smoke and metal down into cloud. No triumph, just release. The bombers hold course. Their formation, improbably, remains intact. You circle them, eyes scanning for another attack, heart drumming a rhythm older than reason. When the last fighter breaks off, the sky returns to its indifferent silence. You breathe again, realizing you've been holding air for minutes. Over the radio, voices count survivors. A few names are missing. No one says them twice. The mission continues. Below the clouds. At 10,000 feet, the air changes color. Lighter, thinner, tasting of metal and frost. The bombers drop their loads over industrial yards you'll never see clearly. From above, explosions bloom in slow motion, orange flowers folding into gray stems. Smoke rises to meet you, warm against the cold cockpit glass. A crosswind hits. The plane trembles. You correct gently, fingertips light on the stick. In the mirror of the canopy you glimpse your own eyes, wide but steady. You've learned that steadiness is not fear's absence, it's its domestication. Below, villages scatter like coins tossed across hills. Somewhere, a bell rings through the din, a church refusing to keep quiet. For a moment, the war feels impossibly far away, like a dream someone else is having. Then the return route begins. Fuel gauges edge down, throats dry from recycled air. Clouds close around the formation, gray walls laced with lightning. Static dances across the radio. Voices fade in and out. The world reduces to needle, compass, breath. In that storm-lit tunnel, time loses its edge. You could be anywhere, any year, anyone. And then light returns. Sudden, blinding, perfect. The sea below mirrors the sky, and you can't tell which side of heaven you're on. You realize that after so many missions, this is what you will remember most. The seconds between danger and calm, where existence itself feels newly invented. The return. Back at Ramitelli, the airfield shimmers in late afternoon haze. Engines descend one by one, wheels biting dust, flaps whining. Ground crews wave flags. Medics wait, half hidden by jeeps. You taxi in, canopy open, lungs burning with leftover adrenaline. The mechanic runs alongside, hand on the wingtip as if to steady both of you. You kill the engine. The sudden quiet is startling. Only the ticks of cooling metal and the gulls from the coast. Someone laughs, a short, cracked sound, and others join until the air fills with something like relief. No celebration, just breathing in unison. Later, you walk the line of parked planes. Bullet holes pepper one wing, another's tail is scorched black. You touch the damage the way you'd trace a scar on a brother's skin. Proof of survival has its own beauty. Inside the mess tent, the smell of coffee and damp uniforms. A clerk types the after-action report, the keys striking like tiny gunshots. A pilot at the next table sketches Italy from memory, marking the places where smoke had once been. Someone plays a harmonica too softly to recognize the tune. Outside, night gathers fast. The last light slides off the fuselages, leaving only red tails gleaming faintly in lamplight. They look almost alive, breathing in rhythm with the wind. You sit on a crate, helmet beside you, and watch the horizon lose its color. The sea murmurs in the dark, repeating your heartbeat. A flare goes up from a distant ship, white against black, and fades. You think of those who didn't return today, their absence spread thin across the sky like exhaust that never settles. You whisper a single word, thanks, and let the wind carry it. When you finally turn toward your tent, the red paint on the nearest tail catches the lantern glow and blushes like blood remembering light. You stop, hand on metal, and feel the hum still alive beneath the surface. It's not the plane, it's you. Above, stars gather. The same constellations that watched you in Alabama, now sharper for the altitude you've earned. You lie back in the grass, smell oil on your fingers, and listen to the cooling earth. Sleep comes the way flight once did, hesitant, trembling, inevitable. And the sky, patient as ever, closes around you like a promise kept. Chapter 4: Brothers in Flight, the 332nd Fighter Group. The Gathering. The orders arrive folded and smudged, carried by a corporal whose boots leave dark ovals in the dust. Ramitelli Airfield, Adriatic Coast. The name feels foreign in your mouth, like a promise you haven't decided to believe. When you get there, the sea greets you first, briny, wind-torn, endless. Salt rides every gust, tangling with the smell of fuel and paint. Tents bloom along the perimeter in tidy rows, canvas roofs billowing like lungs. Men shout over engines. Someone is hammering a crate into shape. War always sounds like construction before it sounds like destruction. The red tails come together piece by piece. The 99th, 100th, 301st, and 302nd Squadrons. Pilots who've trained apart now line up shoulder to shoulder, eyes narrowing against the glare. Voices overlap, drawls, baritones, laughter still edged with suspicion. 1,000 differences, but one sky to answer to. A colonel with calm eyes, Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., stands on the back of a truck. He doesn't shout. He never needs to. His silence is an order all its own. When he speaks, it's measured and final. You will escort the bombers. You will bring them home. No decoration, no doubt. The words drop into the dust and stay there, solid as rivets. Later, paint crews move down the flight line. Brushes drip crimson across silver fuselages. Each stroke dries to a gleam that catches the sinking sun. You watch until the color burns behind your eyelids. It looks like identity finally finding a shape. The rhythm of men and machines. Days settle into ritual. Briefing at dawn, flight checks by habit, takeoffs staggered like notes in a chord. From above, the pattern must look like choreography, lines of motion converging, separating, converging again. Discipline binds you tighter than gravity. Every man carries another's life in his periphery. You know their habits as well as your own. Johnson always taps his altimeter twice before throttle up. Carter whispers a prayer he never finishes. Evans hums swing tunes through his oxygen mask. You can pick them out in formation by rhythm alone. Between sorties, the flight line hums with small devotions. Mechanics roll sleeves, wipe sweat with rags gone gray. They speak to engines the way preachers speak to souls, firmly, lovingly, expecting answers. When one coughs wrong, Three heads turn. Every problem here is a family matter. Mail arrives late and in handfuls. Letters smell of talcum and kitchen smoke. You read them in sunlight, paper glowing thin as memory. One man gets a photo of his newborn daughter. He keeps it in his flight jacket, folded to fit against the heart. Another gets nothing at all, but keeps pretending he has. Compassion learns discretion. Night brings maintenance, coffee burnt and sweet, the slow tick of cooling metal. Far off, artillery mutters. Closer still, the sea breathes against shore. You learn to measure peace not by silence, but by the distance between explosions. The measure of respect. The first bomber crews who meet you are polite but skeptical. They've heard stories, the kind that begin with statistics and end with prejudice. They expect novelty, not reliability. Then the missions pile up. Ploiești, Anzio, Berlin. Every escort returned with bombers intact. No losses to enemy fighters. Rumor becomes reputation. Reputation becomes fact. In the officers' mess, a white pilot raises his glass halfway in your direction. No speech, just acknowledgement. It's more than you thought you'd get. Respect is a language best spoken without words. Headlines back home echo across the Atlantic. Red tail angels guard bombers again. For once the articles run without asterisks. Your mothers cut them out and paste them into albums. You imagine their fingers smoothing each corner, whispering names the journalists never print. When a general visits, he stands for photographs beside your planes. Cameras flash, medals glint. You stand one row back, eyes forward. You know history's habit of cropping edges, but you stay still anyway. Proof is proof. That night, a letter from Davis himself circulates through the tents. 2 sentences typed on official stationery. You have done what many said could not be done. Continue. The paper feels heavier than its weight. You tuck it into your logbook beside a pressed olive leaf from the hills above Anzio. Symbol meets substance. Night over the Adriatic. A mission north. Thunderheads rolling over the sea. Engines drone low, the sound stretched thin by altitude. You fly at the edge of rain, instruments trembling, lightning stitching quick seams across the clouds. In the brief flashes you see everything. The bombers below, the reflection of your own red tail in their glass noses, the face of a man who believes in you though he's never spoken your name. It feels, absurdly, like grace. Then the storm breaks apart. The sky opens, washed clean. Moonlight lays a silver road across the Adriatic. You follow it home, propellers carving the wind into him. Landing lights bloom along the runway, little constellations arranged by faith. Wheels kiss ground, engines sigh. You taxi in, canopy open, rain still beading on goggles. Someone waves a lantern. Slow, sweeping circles of welcome. You answer with a wag of the wings. In the mess later, laughter arrives hesitant, then sure. Someone passes a bottle. Someone else starts a tune on a dented harmonica. It wanders through the tent, soft as prayer. Outside, the sea keeps time against the shore. The planes rest in rows, their red tails glinting under floodlights like banked coals waiting for dawn. You stand in the doorway watching them. For the first time in months, you let yourself believe the war might be winnable, not because of generals or maps, but because brotherhood has learned to fly. A breeze rises off the water, bringing salt and engine grease. It threads through the camp, touches every tent, and moves on. You breathe it in and feel it settle behind your ribs, the same mixture of exhaustion and faith that has kept you alive this long. You turn back toward the dark, humming the last line of that harmonica tune. The night swallows the sound gently, as if to keep it safe for morning. Chapter 5: Home and the War Within. Return routes. Victory smells like diesel and salt. You come home on a ship built for cargo, not memory. The decks are crowded with duffel bags and men pretending to sleep. Someone plays cards with photos instead of chips. Faces of wives, children, girls met in Naples and left in Naples. Every story ends the same way. When I get back, fog lifts off the harbor. The skyline appears like a promise the sea almost forgot. Whistles blow, tugs push, ropes snap tight. You step onto American soil and feel the shock of stillness. The ground doesn't sway, but the world does. On the pier, a brass band plays something triumphant and a little tired. Spectators wave flags, reporters jot notes. The air tastes of smoke and possibility. You expect warmth. Instead, eyes slide past you to the next uniform in line. No jeers, no cheers, just absence. At the train station, the segregation signs are still there, varnish cracked but message intact. You follow the arrow that points you backward. The bench squeaks under the weight of irony. You hold your duffel close, the medals inside clicking softly, the sound of applause no one hears. Grounded. Home is quieter than you remember. The porch boards creak. The kitchen clock still hesitates at 12. Your mother's hair has silver at the temples now. She hugs you too long, then pulls back to study your face as if you might dissolve if she blinks. You smile because she needs you to. Evenings smell of cornbread and rain on tin roofs. Neighbors drop by, curious, polite, careful. They ask about over there, the way people ask about dreams they don't intend to understand. You give them the short version: long flights, cold air, good men. You leave out the rest. You try to sleep, but silence feels unpressurized. No engines, no wind, no radio crackle to keep time. You lie awake counting the seconds between your own breaths until dawn finds you dressed again, searching the sky for formation lines that no longer exist. The closed hangar. You go looking for work at the local airfield. The sign at the gate says help wanted. The man at the desk says not today. His tie is perfect, his smile professional, his refusal practiced. You leave your application anyway, the paper still warm from your hand. Next door, a civilian pilot taxis a gleaming Cessna down the strip. He waves as he passes. The wave means nothing and everything. Weeks later, a letter arrives. Position filled. You already knew. You take odd jobs, delivery, repair, painting fences for men who call you flyboy without irony. You whistle while you work, half to drown the ache of engines missing from your days. At night you clean your shoes until the polish smells like altitude. Between two wars. Across the South, veterans gather in borrowed halls. Folding chairs, weak coffee, strong memories. You sit among them, listening. Each man carries his own battle still running under the skin. One can't stand loud noises, one can't stand silence, one drinks until both feel the same. A pastor from Montgomery reads from the paper about a woman who refused to give up her seat on a bus. The room goes quiet. Someone murmurs, "Maybe she's one of us." Someone else says, "Then she's flying without wings." Letters start circulating. Petitions for equal treatment in the armed forces, for fairness in housing loans, for dignity that doesn't require a uniform. You sign every one, knowing change moves slower than any plane you've flown. Outside, thunder gathers. Summer storms, political storms. Lightning splits the horizon. The rain that follows smells like new beginnings and old soil. You tilt your face to it and let it fall. Echoes of flight. Years spool out like film, frames of work and patience. You marry. You build a life small enough to hold but large enough to dream in. Sometimes, on Sundays, you drive the long road to the edge of the city where the new airport gleams. Jets rise one after another, impossibly fast, impossibly loud. Children point upward. Parents cover ears. You stand apart, hands in pockets, watching vapor trails curl into hieroglyphs of progress. A maintenance worker notices the pin on your lapel, the tiny red tail catching light. He nods once, not quite sure why. That's enough. Back home, you keep your old flight jacket in a cedar chest. The leather has cracked. The smell of altitude still lingers. Sometimes you take it out, trace the seams, and remember how it felt to move through air that didn't argue back. One night, during a storm, thunder rattles the windows just right. For a moment, you could swear you hear propellers again. You sit up, heart quickening, not in fear but recognition. You whisper into the dark, still flying, and the house, kind and old, seems to nod. The long view. Time gentles what it cannot erase. Your hair whitens, your voice lowers, your anger cools into purpose. You speak at schools, at parades, at funerals for friends who made it home only to fade here. Children ask why the planes were painted red. You tell them because sometimes the world needs a visible heartbeat. When President Truman's order finally integrates the armed forces, the news reaches you through a neighbor's radio. You stand on the porch, rain hissing on the steps, and let the static carry his words. Integration. A simple word that took a sky full of proof. Years later, another war begins, and new pilots climb into new machines. Many of them look like you. You watch from your living room, television light flickering across your hands, and feel something between pride and prayer. At night, you walk outside. Above you, a commercial jet traces a silent path across the stars. No one on board knows your name. That's all right. You didn't fly for fame. You flew for the possibility that one day no one would have to. The wind lifts, cool and certain. Somewhere far off, thunder rolls again, familiar, forgiving. You close your eyes and see the red tail catching sunlight, climbing into memory until it becomes part of the light itself. Chapter 6. Allies and Eyes. The World Watching. First Impressions. The Adriatic airfield hums with foreign tongues. Italian mechanics in rolled sleeves pass fuel drums hand to hand. A British corporal lights a cigarette with the same lighter he swore to quit using yesterday. Every sound carries two languages, English clipped like radio static, Italian spilling like water over stones. You listen and understand none of it, yet the meaning is clear. Work, fatigue, survival. When your flight lands, heads turn. Men stop hammering. Children perched on the fence shout, "American-y," and wave both hands. To them, the color of skin matters less than the shimmer of metal. You wave back through the canopy, embarrassed by the honesty of their joy. Later, in the officer's tent, a British major with sun-cracked lips offers you lukewarm tea. He studies the red paint on your sleeve patch, then says, almost to himself, "Never lost a bomber, they say." You answer, "Not yet." He grins, teeth startlingly white in the dim light. "Keep it that way, old boy." For the first time, the phrase "old boy" doesn't sting. That night you walk the perimeter road. Sea air cools the dust. The moon slides between broken clouds. Somewhere across the bay a mandolin plays, thin and far. It sounds like peace practicing its scales. The view from the ground. A convoy stops near a farm outside Bury, and for an hour the war forgets itself. Children swarm around the trucks, palms out, faces bright with hunger and wonder. A pilot tears open an emergency ration and hands out chocolate squares. The smallest girl bites hers, eyes widening at the taste. She says something that makes the others laugh, and you realize she's never had chocolate before. For the rest of the week, you carry an extra bar in your pocket, just in case. Back on base, journalists arrive. Their cameras smell of leather and powder, their questions rehearsed. How does it feel to be part of history? You shrug. History, to you, feels like maintenance schedules and missed sleep. But you answer politely. A reporter from London asks if the red tails are superstition or strategy. You tell her they're neither. Their identity made visible. She nods, writes identity visible in her notebook, underlines it twice. When the photographs appear in magazines weeks later, the captions read, "Heroes of the Air." Readers never notice the sweat, the grime, the fear hiding behind the goggles. But mothers clip the pages anyway, and that's what matters. Between enemies. Intelligence officers question a downed German pilot. He's young, 20, maybe. He stares at the floor when he says, "Red-tailed fighters, black pilots, always together. We learned not to attack when we saw them." The translator hesitates, then repeats it. In the mess that evening, the quote circulates like legend. You listen without comment, stirring powdered coffee until it foams. Respect from an enemy tastes odd, half bitterness, half validation. Later, over the Adriatic, you intercept radio chatter in German. Fast, urgent, fearful. You don't know the words, but tone is universal. For the first time you feel that your existence alone has become a strategy. Visibility as protection. Color as shield. Allied eyes. Newsreels travel faster than mail. In London cinemas, couples on ration dates watch grainy footage of your squadron taxiing for takeoff. The narration calls you the Red Angels. The audience sighs at the beauty of the footage, propellers shining like halos, planes lifting into morning fog. They don't see the exhaustion. They see possibility. Letters pour in, British schoolchildren, Polish refugees, French nurses. One writes, "When I look up and see red against blue, I think maybe the world can start again." You fold that letter into your flight log beside maps and weather notes. Paper is fragile. Belief is not. At base, a group of Italian farmers arrive with crates of oranges, a thank you for escorting the bombers that saved their town. They unload the fruit silently, bow once, and leave. The hangar fills with the sharp scent of citrus and gratitude. For days afterward, the smell lingers in uniforms and engines alike, a sweetness that refuses to burn away. Crosswinds. One afternoon, a photographer asks you to stand for a portrait beside your plane. The sea behind you glitters. The wind toys with your scarf. He tells you to look proud. You do, but pride here is complicated. Part relief, part disbelief, part duty fulfilled. When the shutter clicks, you blink. Years later, that blink will be frozen forever in textbooks, mistaken for serenity. In the next tent, a radio operator listens to jazz transmitted from Algiers. Trumpet, bass, static. It sounds like home filtered through distance. Pilots gather, tapping boots softly on the floorboards. The rhythm feels like breathing again. For a while, war becomes background noise, life the melody. Silence after applause. Victory arrives as rumor first, then confirmation. Germany surrenders. Ships whistle. Church bells, long silent, find their voices again. In the villages, women hang laundry not because it's needed, but because white cloth fluttering in the wind looks like celebration. At Ramitelli, there's no parade, just an announcement through crackling speakers, followed by an awkward cheer. You shake hands, exchange nods, then turn to the practicalities of peace. Paperwork, inventory, the logistics of dismantling purpose. Engines are drained, tents folded, flight logs signed for the last time. The red paint dulls under layers of dust, color fading into myth even as you watch. Reporters return for final statements. They ask what comes next. No one knows. Someone jokes, maybe we'll repaint the planes white and start over. No one laughs. That night, you walk the empty runway. The Adriatic murmurs in the dark. The stars look close enough to touch. You kneel, press a palm to the cold surface, and feel faint vibrations from the tide below. The earth and sea share one heartbeat, same as always. For the first time in years, you let yourself imagine tomorrow. In the distance, a single plane remains parked under guard, museum piece before its time. You stand beside it until dawn paints the fuselage pink and gold. Light catches the red tail, wakes it. For an instant it looks ready to fly again. You smile. Maybe it never stopped. Chapter 7. Losses and Legacy. Names in the Wind. The list. It starts as a sheet of paper tacked to a wooden board, flapping faintly in the morning wind. You pass it every day on your way to briefing. At first it's just names of men you barely knew, other squadrons, other skies. Then one day, it isn't. Someone has written casualty report across the top in neat capital letters. The ink bleeds slightly where sweat or rain touched it. You tell yourself not to look, but you stop anyway. Everyone does. You find a name that pulls the air from your lungs. A friend whose laugh could drown engines. You trace the letters with one finger until your glove darkens with dust. Then you walk away because standing still feels too much like surrender. The mess tent that morning smells of coffee and silence. No one reads the list aloud, but everyone eats slower. Each spoon against metal tray sounds like punctuation. Outside, the wind picks up, lifting the corner of the paper again, then dropping it back. The motion looks almost like breathing. The empty chair. Loss leaves behind objects. Helmets, books, an unclaimed harmonica. In one tent, an empty bunk stays neatly made, blanket folded with military precision. No one touches it. The officers don't mention it in inspection. The sergeants look the other way. The absence becomes part of the furniture, the way silence becomes part of a song once the note fades. You find yourself listening differently after that, to footsteps, to engines starting, to the way your own breath fogs the glass. You imagine the missing man still flying somewhere above the cloud line, invisible but on course. In the air, you keep glancing at the space he should occupy in formation. The habit lingers long after the logic ends. Letters arrive addressed to the dead. Return addresses written in careful cursive. The postmaster opens them gently, reading enough to know who should answer. Then he folds them, reseals them, and files them in a box no one names. War invents its own bureaucracy for heartbreak. Burial without ground. For those found, there are ceremonies. Wooden boxes draped in flags too bright for the dirt they rest on. A chaplain recites verses that never mention sky, though they should. You stand at attention until the bugle note trembles and stops. Afterward, men scatter like startled birds, unable to hold the moment too long. Grief here is measured in posture. Straight spine, eyes forward, jaw tight. For those never found, you create rituals small enough to carry. A name whispered before takeoff, a coin left on the wing, a shared silence over dinner. Superstition becomes faith when the alternative is forgetting. Once, during patrol over the Adriatic, sunlight flashes off the sea, a sudden glare shaped like wings. You tell yourself it's reflection, but a part of you believes otherwise. You log the coordinates anyway, because memory needs coordinates. The ground crew's prayer. The mechanics grieve differently. They polish bullet holes as if shine could turn loss into endurance. They tell stories while they work. He said he'd paint her nose yellow when he got back. He still owes me a beer. Their laughter is softer now, but it still exists. Every wrench twist, every bolt tightened becomes a prayer made of motion. One night, after a particularly bad mission, a mechanic drags a chair to the flight line. He lights a cigarette and sits facing the darkness. The smoke rises, blue against the stars. He doesn't say a word. You join him without speaking. Two silhouettes keeping vigil for men neither of you can name all at once. The weight of remembrance. Years later, long after the war has folded itself into photographs, you visit a museum. The air smells of varnish and air conditioning. Behind ropes, a P-51 stands immaculate, paint so perfect it looks wet. Visitors walk around it whispering facts. 332nd Fighter Group, escort missions, 1944. You read the placard twice, searching for the names. There are none. History rarely has room for full sentences of humanity. You lean closer until your reflection warps in the fuselage. For a moment, you see the whole squadron there, every face compressed into that curve of metal. You whisper hello. A boy nearby glances up, curious, then goes back to his phone. You smile. The sky always needed new eyes. At home, you keep your own record, a small notebook filled with names and fragments. Not the dates of death, but the things they said, the jokes they made, the sounds they loved. You read it sometimes before bed, tracing the handwriting until sleep takes you. The pages smell faintly of oil and pencil lead. Memory, you've learned, has a scent. Names in the wind. On anniversaries, you visit the hill above the old airfield. Grass grows where runways once glinted. Crickets sing through dusk. The wind comes steady off the water. You bring no flowers, only time. You whisper names until your throat catches. Some you recall easily, others emerge slowly, like photographs developing in darkroom trays. You let them go one by one, releasing each syllable into the wind. It carries them outward, scattering them across fields, cities, oceans. Somewhere, maybe, they'll land in a place kind enough to remember. When the last name leaves your lips, you sit in silence. The sky above you is streaked pink and copper, the same colors as the red tails catching sunset years ago. You close your eyes and can almost hear the hum again, soft, steady, endless. The wind shifts. It sounds like engines idling for takeoff. You smile, and in that smile, grief finally finds shape. Not heaviness, but lift. You stand, brush grass from your knees, and look west. The horizon glows red just before fading to blue. Evening folds the day gently, like a letter returning home unread but understood. Chapter 8. Changing Currents. The Long Fight After the War. The ground revisited. The war ends on a Tuesday, though peace doesn't seem to notice. You come home with a duffel that smells of salt and gasoline, a handful of medals that glint without warmth, and the strange lightness of someone who survived what others did not. The first thing you feel is gravity. No altitude, no hum, just the heavy air of ordinary life pressing against your lungs. The town looks smaller now, as if victory has shrunk the horizon. Porch swings creak, dogs bark, trains pass. The world has resumed its sentence mid-word. At the diner, the same waitress wipes the same counter. She doesn't look up when you enter, though your uniform still carries Europe's dust. The sign in the window still divides where to sit and where to stand. You sit where you're told. The coffee tastes like nothing at all. You tell yourself not to mind. Habit more than bitterness. But when the cup empties, you see the reflection of your medals in the surface. Brass halos without audience. You leave change on the counter, more than the check deserves, because dignity, like altitude, sometimes costs extra. Outside, sunlight bounces off parked cars, hard and white. The wind smells of hot asphalt. Somewhere a child laughs. You realize the world has learned to keep moving without you. New battles. At first you look for flying work. The civil airlines are hiring, but the rejections come quickly and politely. Thank you for your service, but always that small conjunction, that unbridgeable hinge between gratitude and exclusion. You take a job at a warehouse near the rail yard. It's honest work, sweat, schedules, the discipline of stacked crates instead of formations. The foreman asks once about the patch on your sleeve, then never again. Every paycheck feels like a landing, rough but survivable. On Sundays, veterans gather at the community hall. Wood floors, folding chairs, weak lemonade. You trade stories, talk about the men who didn't come back, the ones who did but aren't the same. Someone says, maybe we were training for something else. You don't ask what he means, but you understand. The real war now is patience. The wind changes direction. In 1948, word spreads fast. President Truman has signed Executive Order 9981, Integration of the Armed Forces. The news crackles through radios, whispered between men in uniforms now faded to gray. You stand in your living room, radio hissing with static and hope. Your hands tremble on the dial. Outside, thunder rolls far off, the sky agreeing in its own way. You think of all the men who didn't live to hear these words, and for a moment you can almost see them standing beside you, smiling like clouds breaking open. At the next veterans' meeting, the mood is quiet. No cheering, no speeches, just nods. One man says, "Took them long enough." Another says nothing, staring at the flag on the wall until his eyes blur. For the first time, the air in that hall feels breathable. Ripples beyond the runway. The years turn. America grows restless again. Marches, voices, signs carried through streets demanding the freedom that peace forgot to deliver. You watch from a porch, hands clasped around coffee that has gone cold. The young look fearless. They remind you of pilots waiting for takeoff. On the television, you see a man named Martin speak before a crowd so vast it looks like a formation made of people. He talks about dreams and justice, his voice rising steady and sure. You recognize that cadence, the rhythm of command under faith. For a moment, you hear engines behind his words. You whisper, "Fly safe," though he can't hear you. Letters arrive again. School teachers ask for stories. Universities invite you to lecture about the war. You tell them about teamwork, about precision, about silence between propellers. But what they really want to know is how you kept faith when everything said you shouldn't. You tell them the truth. Faith was the only instrument that never malfunctioned. Flight reimagined. A summer air show brings you back to a field of noise and memory. Families crowd the fences. Children hold cardboard planes on strings. Vendors sell popcorn that smells like engine exhaust if you close your eyes. Then you see it, sleek, restored, freshly painted. A P-51 Mustang with a tail redder than you remember. It taxis out, propeller turning slow and sure. The pilot waves through the canopy. She's young, her smile fearless. When the plane lifts, the sound cuts through every layer of time. You follow it up with your eyes until it becomes a fleck of light against blue. The crowd cheers. You don't. You just stand there, letting the tears sting quietly. Because this is what legacy looks like when it learns how to breathe. After the show, the pilot finds you. She's read about the red tails, trained on simulators that still use your formation patterns. She thanks you. You say you're welcome, and mean it for everyone who never got to. That night, back home, you dream of flight again. Not of war, but of ascent. No radio chatter, no tracers, just wind and open sky. You wake before dawn, heart steady, the echo of engines humming faintly in your chest. Endurance as legacy. Time thins like altitude. You move through it slowly. Old photographs curl in their frames. Letters yellow at the edges. Yet the story keeps finding new air. In classrooms, children trace red tails in crayon. In documentaries, your younger face appears, voice replaced by narration. Sometimes they get the details wrong, but that doesn't bother you. Myth has always been how truth keeps itself alive. You visit a museum in Washington where an exhibit bears your squadron's emblem. Teenagers shuffle past with earbuds in, half listening. One girl lingers, though, reads every caption, studies every photo. Before she leaves, she turns and says, "Thank you for flying." The words land heavier than any medal. You nod once, the only salute left in you. That evening, you sit by the window and watch contrails fade across the sky. The sun burns down through haze, coloring the clouds red before surrendering to dusk. You think, we carried that color all the way home, and the thought fills you, warm and infinite. Chapter 9. The Sky That Binds Us. Same sky, different doors. You've spent a lifetime looking up. Even now, when your neck aches and the world feels smaller, the sky still looks infinite. Airports rise where airfields once baked under sun. Passengers line up with tickets and coffee cups, unaware they're walking the same coordinates where you once prayed a propeller would catch. You stand at a terminal window, glass cool against your palm. Outside, a plane begins its roll, engines howling like something ancient remembering how to sing. When it lifts, sunlight strikes its tail. For half a heartbeat, it flashes red. You blink, and the color fades, but the meaning stays. Across the world, in places you once flew above, life hums on. Children chase kites through rebuilt fields. Farmers tend vineyards where bomb craters once drank rain. The same wind that carried smoke now carries laughter. You wonder if air can hold memory, if molecules remember the sound of courage. You suspect they do. Reunions and reverberations. The reunion hall smells of coffee, liniment, and old jokes. Chairs outnumber men now. Names once shouted across runways are murmured through dentures and nostalgia. Someone brings a box of photographs, curled black and white edges, smiles frozen mid-laugh. The stories start slow, then flow. A man remembers losing an engine over Vienna. Another swears he once saw angels over the Alps. You tell the one about the mechanic who fixed planes with chewing gum and prayer. Laughter fills the room, fragile but real. A boy in uniform, his grandson, helps set up the microphone. He wears the same patch on his shoulder that you once did. He asks what it was like back then. You answer, noisy, beautiful, heavy. He nods, maybe understanding one of those words. Outside, dusk slips in unnoticed. Through the windows you see headlights moving like slow comets across the parking lot. Each one feels like a farewell disguised as routine. When the evening ends, you shake hands that tremble more than they used to. A promise hangs in the air without needing to be said. We'll see each other again, one more time, somewhere in the blue. Letters to the future. Schools invite you to speak now. The gym smells of varnish and curiosity. Rows of faces, bright and restless, stare up as you begin. You tell them about the sky as a teacher, how it accepted no excuses, how it forgave every mistake that was corrected in time. You speak of fear, not as shame, but as proof of value. Afterward, questions flutter like paper planes. Were you scared? Yes. Did people treat you badly? Yes. How did you keep going? Because stopping would have proved them right. A girl raises her hand, brow furrowed. Do you think people are better now? You pause, glance toward the open windows where sunlight drifts across the floor. The sky hasn't changed, you say. We're still learning how to deserve it. They clap softly. When they leave, one boy lingers, presses a folded note into your hand. Later, you read it in the parking lot. It says only, "I want to fly too." You smile, because that was always the point. The weight of light. Age teaches economy. You move slower, speak less, but see more. Every sunrise feels rehearsed and brand new at once. You wake early, make coffee, sit by the window. The steam rises like thin ghosts of every morning you spent waiting for weather reports. Sometimes you dream you're back in the cockpit. Not in battle, just flying. Clouds slide beneath you, endless and forgiving. Your hands rest on the throttle without shaking. In the dream, there's no radio, no orders, only the low hum that once defined existence. When you wake, that sound lingers just long enough to make you believe the engines never truly stopped. Outside, contrails slice white lines through the blue. They cross, merge, disappear. You realize that memory works the same way, visible for a moment, then folded back into air. Still there, just unseen. You open the window. The wind that enters smells faintly of rain and jet fuel, the scent of every takeoff ever made. It fills your lungs and leaves slowly, as if reluctant to go. What endures? At a museum dedication, a crowd gathers under banners and polished metal. The new display glints beneath floodlights. Tuskegee Airmen, wings of valor. People clap, cameras flash, speeches echo. You stand near the back, cane in hand, listening. They say the words courage, legacy, trailblazers. You nod politely, but inside you think of the small things. The way frost formed on the canopy glass, the weight of a helmet in your lap, the smell of oranges at the Bury airfield. When the ribbon is cut, applause swells. A boy on his father's shoulders points to the red tail suspended above and shouts, "Look, Dad. That's them." His father smiles. The boy waves at the plane as if it might wave back. You close your eyes, letting the sound of clapping blur into something gentler. Propellers, rain, heartbeat. That night, lying in bed, you think about the word brotherhood. It no longer means the men you flew with. It means anyone who understands what it costs to rise. The color red and the color light have become the same thing now. Courage seen from two directions. You whisper into the dark. We kept flying. Outside, the wind answers, sliding through leaves with a low murmur of an engine idling in heaven. Epilogue. The light remains. Morning begins quietly, as if the world itself were still deciding to wake. A pale ribbon of sun slips through the blinds and lands across your hands. Your knuckles are thin now, but the veins still map out the same paths, lines that once held a throttle steady against gravity. You turn them palm up, studying the small tremor of age. The body forgets strength before the heart does. The radio murmurs on the counter, tuned to some station that still believes in brass bands. Between songs, a reporter's voice announces the dedication of a new monument in Washington, a plaza of polished stone etched with your unit's name. You picture the ceremony without needing to see it. The flags rising in slow wind, the measured applause, the light glancing off letters that will outlive every speaker. You pour coffee and watch the steam climb into sunlight. It twists, vanishes, reforms, motion without hurry. You think, that's what endurance looks like once it finds peace. Outside, the day hums faintly. Lawnmowers, sparrows, an airplane far off tracing its clean white arc across the blue. Each sound, mundane and eternal, part of the same old symphony of continuation. You step onto the porch. The air smells of cut grass and jet fuel drifting from the city airport 10 miles away. You close your eyes, breathe deep. Somewhere, a child is pressing her face to a plane window. Someone is checking instruments before takeoff. Someone else is dreaming of flight without knowing why. All of it feels connected, threads of motion weaving the same endless fabric. A breeze stirs the trees, carrying a whisper of salt from the sea. It touches your sleeve like recognition. You smile, remembering 1,000 mornings that began just like this. The same temperature of hope. The same fragile calm before propellers bit into air. The mind drifts easily now. Tuskegee, Selfridge, Ramitelli. Each name floats past like a cloud, familiar, harmless, bright at the edges. You see faces too, some alive, some long folded into history. You hear the laughter that used to echo down hangar corridors, the metallic clatter of tools, the deep-throated growl of engines waking from sleep. For a moment, it all comes back in perfect focus. Red tails lined up in sunlight. The colonel's voice steady as truth. Your own breath fogging the glass as the world fell away beneath you. Then the vision softens, like film overexposed, leaving only light. You sit again, pen in hand, and open the old logbook. The pages are yellowed, corners curled. You add one final line in slow, careful handwriting. We kept the promise. You close it gently. The sound is small, but final. Afternoon slides toward evening. Light tilts through the windows, turning everything gold. You watch dust float in the beam, tiny particles suspended, each catching its own flare. It looks like flight slowed down enough to see. When the sun dips, the color shifts, gold to amber, amber to rose. For a heartbeat, the whole room glows the same shade as the red tail you once followed into battle. You reach out and let it rest against your fingertips. It's warm, familiar. forgiving. The breeze moves again, lifting a curtain, bringing the scent of rain and distance. It carries a sound so faint you almost miss it. The low hum of engines far above. A vibration more felt than heard. You smile, eyes half closed. After all these years, the sky is still speaking. The hum fades, replaced by the hush of evening settling over the neighborhood. Crickets starting, a door closing 2 houses down. The quiet rhythm of ordinary life continuing because it can. You lean back, let your head rest against the chair, and in that silence, the world feels weightless again. Somewhere, the last light of the day slides along the horizon, catching on glass, on metal, on memory, turning everything it touches to forgiveness. You think of all the names that carried you here, of every hand that steadied your wing, of every moment when courage chose not to shout, but to endure. You whisper a single line to no one and everyone at once. We're home now. The wind answers by lifting once more, moving through the trees with the soft murmur of a distant propeller. It passes over you, gentle as a blessing, and carries onward into the darkening sky. The light remains. Always. Aftermath. The sky that never judged. The war is over, but the sound of flight never leaves you. Even now, when the engines are long gone, you still hear it, that steady hum beneath memory, the rhythm that once stitched courage to the sky. It comes back sometimes in sleep, sometimes in silence, not as noise, but as pulse. Morning over Alabama again. The airfield is cracked, the paint on the hangar peeled to chalk. Grass pushes through the tarmac where your tires once screamed against takeoff. A red tail gleams faintly in the museum light, polished by hands that were not yet born when you flew it. You stand a moment, feeling the ghost of vibration through the soles of your shoes, the echo of lift, of trust, of impossible ascent. You remember the faces. Brown, tired, determined. Cadets who studied by lantern glow, who sanded wings smooth because they had no replacements. Men who laughed loud to hide the doubt that others had planted in them. Every patch sewn, every checklist recited, was an act of defiance whispered to history. We are here. We can. They called you experiment, exception, symbol. But you were simply aviators, young, precise, alive. You flew bomber escort missions across skies that did not want you, guarding men who would later pass you on the ground without a glance. In the air, you saved lives that would never know your names. And when you landed, you saluted a flag that did not yet salute you back. There was a different kind of turbulence waiting on the ground. Restaurants with empty stools you couldn't sit on. Barracks divided by color instead of rank. Uniforms that opened doors for others, but not for you. The same country that had asked for your courage now asked for your silence. And still, you stood straighter, spoke softer, kept flying. Because dignity was the only uniform no one could take away. Time moved on. The world found new enemies, new wars, new heroes. But the red tails stayed in the sky, bright against the blue, unburned by years. When jet engines replaced propellers, when space replaced sky, your legacy remained, a quiet contrail drawn across every horizon that came after. Children grew up seeing your photographs in textbooks, not knowing how much noise hides inside that calm. They learned the names: Davis, Robinson, Brown, Williams. But history seldom teaches the sound, the moment when air bends under courage, when fear and hope share the same altitude. You know that sound. You carry it still. There are memorials now. Bronze statues where the air smells of fresh-cut grass and ceremony. Air shows where new pilots trace loops in tribute to what you once did in war. People clap. They say trailblazer, pioneer, hero. The words are heavy, but they fit awkwardly, as if language is still learning how to speak respect. Yet somewhere between applause and silence, the truth hums steady. You did not fly to prove a point. You flew because flight itself was freedom, because above the clouds, no one could redraw the lines that Earth kept drawing beneath you. You look up now. A plane passes overhead, silver skin flashing in the sun. For a moment, its wings catch the same light you once chased. The sky, eternal and impartial, accepts it without question, as it once accepted you. Up there, the air has no prejudice, no borders, no color but blue. It remembers only motion, the simple faith of lift. You smile, because that was always the secret, wasn't it? The sky never judged. Only people did. And by returning to that sky, again and again, you taught the world what equality feels like. Weightless. The museum closes soon. The light slants lower, gold on aluminum. Outside, a child points to the red tail and asks who flew it. A parent answers quietly, reverently, as if naming a constellation. And in that small exchange, you rise once more, not as myth, but as memory taking shape in new eyes. The air smells of dust and sunlight. The hum fades, but the silence that follows feels kind, the kind of silence that holds gratitude instead of grief. You breathe it in. You let it go. The horizon opens like forgiveness. Thank you for listening. You've been part of Echoes of War, where stories rise on quiet wings, and the past still circles above us, refusing to land.